Hello folks, welcome back to the shop. Period Woodworker here. I've been away for several weeks. My regular job has kept me pretty busy, and I wanted to come back and throw up a couple of videos and start the series on some of these high-end sharpening stones that I had promised you. And before I start, let me tell you a little story. About 40 some years ago, when I was dating my wife, and we've been married a little over 40 years. She worked in a medical laboratory in a hospital, or she was, at least at that time, she was taking her training in a medical laboratory. And part of her duties at some period during her training, she was in the department where they would take tissue samples and they would slice them extremely thin and they were embedded in blocks of wax, so that they could be studied or stained or whatever that they needed to do and looked at through a microscope or other analytical machines or something like that. And I can remember sitting over there sometimes waiting on her to get off her shift or her duty so that we could go out and do whatever 20-some-year-olds did. And I happened to notice this machine, and it had a blade on it that you just could not imagine the sharpness. If you accidentally even touched it, you were heading over to her other friends who were taking their training in the stitches department. And it was extremely sharp. Well, after they would use that machine during the day, they would take the blade out and they would mount it in some type of machine designed strictly for that. And that machine would hone that blade back and forth over a series of stones. And I can remember back then, for the first time, I noticed the word or the name on these stones, or at least on the finest finishing stone, was an Escher stone. E-S-C-H-E-R, I believe is how it was spelled. And so as I started woodworking later on and started getting a little money, and you get married and you grow up and you start collecting stuff, I start collecting these Escher stones, among many others that I did. Because I really had quite a fascination for them. They weren't like regular sharpening stones because, to be honest with you, they really didn't sharpen. An Escher stone is really designed for a final honing, putting the edge on it that you can't get with sharpening stones. I think that they really complete the edge and they eliminate as many microscopic serrations as you possibly can get on one. So, when I did my video a while back, I showed you all the stones that I have, and I'm probably going to get rid of most of them because, to be honest with you, some of these higher end, I think other people could probably enjoy them and use them much more than I, because they just sit in my secured storage, because I use other stones that don't need to give me quite the edge that an Escher stone would do. So when I come back, part 2 of this, we're going to be looking at all the stones, in all the Escher stones. And but before I do that, I want to give a quick shout out to a friend that I have come to know here on YouTube. He does some other sharpening stuff, and I believe he's in this group of people who are interested in this for the straight razor shaving, and those are the ones that really use these Eschers, and they're the ones that really create the market for these because they're very expensive stones. I don't think that if I were at a tender age right now that I would be collecting them because they're much too expensive. But this person's name, his name is Hillbuggle 100 or something. I'll put a link, if I can figure out how to do it, right down below the screen here. And you might go over and check him out. So when I come back in part 2, we'll take a look at some of these stones. We'll compare some of the differences within the group of Escher stones. And then probably following that, I'll do another video later on just the general water stones, which Escher is a water stone. So thanks for joining me. Period Woodworker here. You come back and we'll take a look at part 2. Thanks for joining me.